Welcome to the WalterFootball.com podcast. This is episode 306. We're doing our Week 13 NFL picks against the spread. Plus, we're going to talk about the Ravens-Steelers game as well, which is going to happen on Wednesday. Joined once again by Jacob Camenker from the Sporting News. Jacob, how are you, and how's your Week 12?
I'm doing great today. My Week 12 was very weird. I did very well. The picks I announced on Twitter, I think I went 5-3 on them, which is pretty good. And then in the Super Contest, we went 5-0 in our joint entry, which was great. But somehow I have a 7-8 record. I just had some horrible luck between the Seahawks losing their cover late to the Eagles on a Hail Mary and meaningless 2-point conversion. I had the Chiefs, and they missed by half a point for their potential cover. So props to you on getting that one right. And then I just did not change my pick in Colts Titans, despite the fact that the Colts were without 3 very key players. And I should have done it, but I was just nah, I'm not going to change this. And that was just me being lazy and stupid. So, I blame myself for one of them, but I got some pretty bad luck last week. So I went 7-8, pending the Baltimore result. Hopefully we'll get a win in that game so I can get back to 500. But yeah, hopefully this upcoming week, I'll have a little bit of better luck in those really close games.
Yeah, that Seahawks-Eagles game was pretty rough for anyone who got the late number. The Seahawks are 4.5 in the Super Contest. I got them for -5.5 on, I think it was Saturday. I saw it was heading up to 6, so I was like, you should probably lock this in. It was a great week. I went 10-5 overall. I hit every single bet I made on Sunday and Monday. And the only loss I had during the week was Thanksgiving with the Cowboys. And I still think if Zach Martin didn't get hurt, I think the Cowboys may have won that game. So whatever. I'll take it. After just a week 11 with brutal luck, week 12, we got some luck definitely with the Seahawks not winning, or the Seahawks winning by 6 instead of 5 to get that number, and also the Buccaneers their comeback at the end to get the backdoor cover. Although if you're going to ask any quarterback in the NFL to get a backdoor cover, I think Tom Brady is at the top, right? So I guess that's fine, whatever. So we just move on to Week 13. So there are 15 games this week, but like I said, we're going to talk about the Ravens and Steelers first. So the Ravens at the Steelers. Steelers open up -10. They're still -10. This game, for some reason, is at 3:40 in the afternoon on Wednesday. I don't understand why they couldn't put this in prime time. Maybe you know something about that, but I don't know. Who do you like this game?
So the actual reason why that game is at 3:40 is because NBC has the rights to broadcast that game. And they have the tree lighting ceremony and Rockefeller dancers, or no, Rockette dancers, not Rockefeller. The Rockettes, they perform that night. So they've had that scheduled. So they didn't want to move it. So they put it in the afternoon, which I am cool with that. I don't mind. It'll give me an excuse to go to bed earlier on Wednesday night. But I mean, it's going to be tough for some people. But anyway, yeah, on to this game. I mean, there's a lot still out there that we don't know about who's going to play for the Ravens. Obviously, we know Lamar Jackson won't play, so that's pretty big impact. I know he's been struggling this year, but you got to imagine if Lamar Jackson's struggling behind that offensive line, Robert Griffin III is not exactly going to have it easy either. And without Mark Andrews, their top pass catching weapon there, it's going to be tough. We don't know if J.K. Dobbins and Mark Ingram are going to play. They're going to be eligible, but there's still no confirmation about whether or not they'll play. So that's just on the offensive side of the ball. Defensive side of the ball, they got good news that Brandon Williams is coming off the COVID list, so he might be able to help stop the run a little bit, but they still might be without Calais Campbell and a bunch of other people. So just with all the people the Ravens are down, I think the Steelers are probably the safe bet to cover in this one. I think that they're going to be really mad about how many times this game was moved too, because this is the second time they've really gotten screwed by a COVID postponement / cancellation. And they lost their bye week against the Titans the first time. And this time Mike Tomlin was like, all right, after Thanksgiving, I'm going to give you guys basically the equivalent of a bye week. And then they lost that because this game was moved. So they're not going to be happy. They're going to see an opportunity to clinch the AFC North by winning this game. Basically, the Browns would still be in the running, but the Ravens wouldn't be able to win it. So I like the Steelers in this one. I'm not going to bet a ton on it because these divisional games can get close, and the Ravens are probably going to be desperate for a win. I just don't know if they have the personnel to keep it that close. So I'll be on the Steelers for one unit in this one.
Yeah. They got 2 games moved. Also, they got a third game moved because the Redskins game got moved to Monday as well. So it's kind of weird how many times their games have been moved this year. And it's kind of bad luck because, if this game were to take place on Tuesday, it sounds like Brandon Williams wouldn't be able to play, but because it's less than 24 hours later, Brandon Williams can play. It doesn't really make much sense to me. But yeah, Williams being on the field is a big difference maker because without him and Calais Campbell, they couldn't really stop the run at all. And I thought that without Williams and Campbell, James Conner or James Conner may not play. So it'll be Benny Snell and Anthony McFarland. They would just go nuts against the Ravens defense. So now the Ravens will be able to stop the run. So the Steelers won't be able to score as much, but I still think they'll cover because Robert Griffin, I just don't think he can get it done, especially with that offensive line. If they had the offensive line from last year, you could say, okay, the Ravens are a good team. They have a backup quarterback starting, which is usually a recipe for for a team to cover. But with their offensive line playing so poorly, I just don't know if they can hold up against the Steelers. So I'm going to be on the Steelers, but without Williams, with Williams playing, I just don't really see a reason to bet this game. So just going to take my winnings from week 12 and move on to week 13, just picking Steelers to cover.
Yeah, I think that's fair. The thing that has gone through my head multiple times is because this game is moved, I feel like anyone that was on the COVID list that wasn't able to play Tuesday but is able to play Wednesday, I feel like they shouldn't be allowed to play. That's just my opinion because really the Steelers are doing the Ravens a favor by this game moving. Then you get into a slippery slope with all this, but the Steelers, it's pretty unfair to them how the Ravens are just getting some reinforcements in this one just because the game got moved by 1 day.
Yeah, I don't know. And thanks for pointing out why this game's at 3:40 instead of 8 o'clock. So with that in mind, I'm hoping that this is the slowest game of all time and it goes to overtime and there's a lightning stoppage and this goes into that ice skating thing they're doing on NBC and everything's ruined for NBC. Just being a little spiteful there. All right. Anyway, let's go to Sunday. But before we get into the games, please hit subscribe on YouTube. We actually hit our 2,000 subscriber mark over the weekend, which is really cool. It's cool. It's a cool milestone for a new channel. So I was really proud of that. It'd be great to hit 2,500 by the end of the season, that'd be awesome. Or hit the like button, comment, whatever. Share this video. It would be great if you guys could do that. So anyway, the first game of the Sunday slate, the Lions at the Bears. This line opened up Bears -6. I don't know why it was -6, but it was taken down to 3. Lots of sharp action on the Lions. So who do you have in this game?
Yeah, I'm with the Sharps on this one. You have to like the Lions in this one. First of all, I don't want to trust Mitch Trubisky. Every time there's the narrative he's regained the starting job or, he's coming into the new year and he's looking better in practice. We see the same thing every time. He still doesn't read the field well. He still overthrows a lot of passes and, he throws picks and turns the ball over and takes sacks. It's just not a recipe for success. Then meanwhile, you look at the Lions and they're going to be motivated to win because Matt Patricia is gone. The players did not like him, as you could see from all of their social media reaction when he left. You rarely see something like that happen once in a year, let alone twice, because Bill O'Brien got a similar treatment on his way out from the Texans. But so the Lions are going to be motivated to show hey, we are a good team. We just had a lousy coach. And then you look at the injuries on the offensive side of the ball, they have a chance to be much healthier. Matthew Stafford looked better on Thanksgiving than I thought he would. He still had some issues and didn't lead the team to a win, but he was able to throw the ball. So that was a good sign. With 10 days off, I think his thumb's going to be better. DeAndre Swift should play. He was almost able to play on Thanksgiving. He was just listed as questionable. So I think with him coming back, that's going to be huge for their run game. It'll give them an extra weapon on offense. And then we got to see if Kenny Golladay is going to play. He's been dealing with a hip injury. That'll be the big difference maker because without Golladay, I think the Chicago pass defense will be able to lock down the Detroit weapons for the most part. So Stafford's going to have to make a lot of plays to win the game. But if Galladay's there, I think that the Lions could win the game on offense, especially if Akeem Hicks is out for the defense. Then they could run all over them. And then, defensively, the Lions aren't great, but the Bears have the second worst offense in the NFL in terms of yardage. And the only reason they're fourth worst in scoring this as of this week is because the Packers let them score a bunch in garbage time last week. Otherwise, they would still be second worst to only the Jets. So I trust the Lions to figure out a way to slow down the Bears, keep this close. So I'll be on Lions +3 for 1 to 2 units. Probably if Kenny Golladay plays, I'll do 2 units for sure.
Yeah, all that scoring at the end, the Bears almost covered too. They almost got the backdoor cover. I was kind of like sweating it out at the end. I'm like, oh, man, this looked like such a short cover. But it was like 41-10, and like suddenly the Bears scored a couple of touchdowns. Luckily, they didn't get the cover. So yeah, I'm with you on this game for now. The injury report is huge. Like you mentioned, the 3 guys, like Swift, Golladay, and Hicks. Like those are the 3 main guys. I think you're right in saying Swift is probably going to play. Like he was close to playing on Thanksgiving. We don't know about Golladay, but Detroit's offense is so different with Golladay. Like it's crazy. Like it's night and day, really. So if they don't have Golladay, and Amendola is still kind of out, then Stafford, who may not be 100% still, is only going to have Marvin Jones to throw to. It seems like the Bears should be able to shut that down pretty easily. But Golladay kind of changes everything. And then Hicks, like the Bears defense is so different without Hicks. Like you can just see it. Like they usually have a great run defense, and then the Packers just steamroll through them. Like Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams had picked up good yardage on the ground. Remember the fourth quarter of that Monday night game with the Vikings? The Vikings couldn't run the ball at all. And then Hicks left the game, and then Dalvin Cook just went off and had some big runs. So the Hicks injury is so huge too. So that's what I'm going to wait on. Like if Galladay's out and Hicks comes back, like I would consider going to the Bears. But if all these guys play, like if Galladay's on the field and like Hicks is back, like I'll still be on the Lions. But then again, like if Hicks is out and Golladay comes back, I'm going to be on the Lions for several units. So it really depends on what the injury report looks like.
Yeah, and I think probably the only way you could get me to switch to the Bears is if Swift and Golladay were out and Hicks was playing. Then I would definitely be on the Bears. I think any other combination, I'm still on the Lions. But, if Hicks plays and Galladay's out, I probably wouldn't bet the game. But any other scenario, I would probably be on the Lions in this one. So it just feels like a good spot for them to, like, flip the bird at Matt Patricia and be like, hey, look at us. We're actually good now that you're gone. So, let's see what happens. I am very interested to see how this game goes because Matt Patricia, I think, went to school at the same place I did. So we're going to see if he was really that bad of a coach or if I can convince myself that he was okay.
We'll see. I don't know. I mean, it seems like the defense got worse with him. I think it's a good point that you made, given that the Lions didn't like Patricia. Like usually in-season firings aren't good for the teams unless there's a bye or the team didn't like the coach. And in this case, in this scenario, they're both. Like the Lions are coming off like a mini bye after Thanksgiving, and they didn't like Patricia. So I think they should be able to rebound. It'd be a lot different if they actually liked Patricia and they were upset by the firing, Anyway, moving on to the next game, Bengals at the Dolphins. This line opened up Dolphins -10.5. It was 11 for most of Tuesday, and it just popped up to 11.5. So who do you like this game?
Yeah, so I'm going to be on the Dolphins in this one. I don't know if I'm going to want to bet this number, but the Bengals they're not very good without Joe Burrow on offense. They skipped right over Ryan Finley, which I thought was hilarious because I spent a good amount of the podcast last week just being like, Ryan Finley is terrible. Like, I don't even know why they're going to bother starting him. And then they decided not to start him. And I was like, oh, that's actually not a bad decision. But then why was he the backup the whole season? Anyway, so they went to Brandon Allen, who, isn't that great either, but at least he had some decent moments against the Giants, even if it came in garbage time. I think that the Dolphins are certainly better than the Giants on defense. They should be able to contain the passing attack of the Bengals, which I think is really all you need to do with that offense, because Gio Bernard is a good backup and receiving back, but he's not good between the tackles behind this offensive line. So I don't think that the Bengals are going to be able to move the ball that much. You look at Brian Flores, he's a great coach, and regardless of who starts a quarterback for them, they should get the job done. The Bengals defense is pretty weak too. And they just haven't done well against the run or the pass really this year. I know they haven't been healthy all the time, but at this point in the year, they're probably just going to, they gave a good effort against the Giants, but they could fold if the Dolphins get up big. And, some people will question, like, can they win by 11 points or 11.5 now? They've won by 11 or more points 5 times this year, the Dolphins have. So that's a pretty impressive record. I was surprised looking at that was the case. So I think that the Dolphins will be ready for this one. They're not going to be looking ahead. I know they have the Chiefs and the Patriots after this one, but they really need to win to stay in the wild card race. So, they might be amped up looking at that Chiefs game, but I don't think it's going to impact them that much in this one, because if they were to lose, then they have two really tough games coming up against the Chiefs and their divisional rival, and might lose the playoff berth. So I think Flores will have them ready. So I'm going to be on the Dolphins in this one. Probably not going to bet it just because the number's too high and you risk the backdoor cover. But office pool purposes, give you the Dolphins.
Yeah, I agree with you. The Chiefs and Patriots coming up, those are two tough games, as you said, and there could be some look ahead factor for sure. I think that given that they already kind of looked ahead a couple weeks ago against Denver, they didn't really take the Broncos that seriously, it seemed like. I think that might play a factor in as well. Like if they didn't have that game, I could see them totally overlooking the Bengals. But because they just overlooked an opponent and lost to them, I think that they're going to be focused. It kind of reminds me of the Steelers game against the Jaguars, where I think, or at least I thought the Steelers might look past the Jaguars, but they didn't, because a couple weeks ago they looked past the Cowboys and almost lost. So it's kind of like they had their easy game and they got it out of the way. The Dolphins had their quote unquote easy game, even though they lost to Denver. I think that means they're going to be focused. Plus Brian Flores, like you said, he's an excellent coach. So I think the Dolphins will show up. So with that in mind, I like the Dolphins to cover. But I agree with what you said about this being, a line that's very high. There's no value here. And there could easily be a backdoor cover. Although I think against the Dolphins, it's much less likely than it was against the Giants. And if you think about it, the Bengals got a kickoff return touchdown last week. And if that didn't happen, they wouldn't have gotten the backdoor cover. So this Bengal team is just miserable. They really don't have anything to play for. It's in their best interest to lose, so they get Penei Sewell. So I don't know if the full effort's going to be here. So with that in mind, I'm going to be on Miami, but not going to bet this game.
I have to say, I was very, very angry last week watching the Bengals just drive down the field on the Giants late, because I'm like, oh, the Giants, they're covered, but they could get back to recover. And I'm like, nah, that won't happen. And then literally red zone cut away from the game for a while. And then they cut back. They're like, Bengals are on the 3-yard line. I was like, are you kidding me? How is that possible? It's been 3 minutes and lo and behold, they got it. But yeah, I'd like to think that Brandon Allen only has one backdoor cover in him per year, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
We'll see. I mean, he almost beat Minnesota last year, so maybe there is something to him. Yeah, that backdoor cover was bad. Although I didn't bet the game. I initially was going to. I had 2 units on the Giants, and then when it came down to it over the weekend, I'm like, I just can't bet the Giants is 6-point road favorites. So, something's going to go wrong, and it did. Even though the Giants should have covered, they didn't. So, just don't bet on bad teams getting tons of points on the road. So. Or laying tons of points on the road anyway. The Colts at the Texans. This line opened up Colts -3.5. It's down to 3. The Texans had some suspensions. Will Fuller and Bradley Roby are out for the year for 6 games each. So who do you like in this game?
I'm mad at Will Fuller too. I'm just mad at a lot of things this week, because Will Fuller is the only good receiver on my competitive fantasy team, and now he's gone. So gotta find a replacement.
I have him on 2 teams, so I feel you.
Yeah, no, it's brutal. But yeah, anyway, so thanks, Will Fuller. But we'll see you next year. I'm leaning on the Colts in this one. There are a lot. Like you said, there are suspensions, and then there are some injury issues too. For the Colts, you mentioned Will Fuller and Bradley Roby. Those are huge, but there's also stacked injuries or absences at receiver too, because they have Brandon Cooks, but they cut Kenny Stills, and Randall Cobb is on IR. So they're down 3 of their top 4 receivers, and I'm a big Kiki Cutie guy. I think he'll be fine, but the depth there is no longer, it's non-existent for Deshaun Watson. So he's going to have to make a lot of stuff happen himself there. And then with the Colts, they have 2 injured offensive linemen. Anthony Costanzo's dealing with a MCL sprain, so I have a tough time imagining he'll play. Then Ryan Kelly's got a neck injury. Frank Reich was saying that he could play this week, but it sounds like he's questionable. And then on the defensive side of the ball, DeForest Buckner's absence was massive for them last week. They had no prayer of stopping the run with Buckner out. So if he comes off the COVID list, I'll be more confident in the Colts defense limiting the Texans. But then again, if the Colts are without 2 offensive linemen, I'm going to have a tough time trusting them to move the ball enough and score enough on the road, even against a lackluster defense. I think the Texans are playing motivated right now too, so that's another reason I'm scared of this game. But I do think that if Ryan Kelly plays, which I'm hoping he will, I think the Colts will be able to survive the absence of Costanzo and pull out the win and the cover here. I'm not confident in that though, and I might switch my pick later in the week. So for now, it's a no bet on the Colts, and we'll see what the injury report brings. But this is probably one of the most important injury games of the week for me.
Yeah, so while you're angry at the Will Fuller news, and I guess so am I, I'm also angry that we're not getting good line value with the Colts in this game. The advanced spread on this game was Colts -3.5, and so when the Colts got slaughtered by the Titans and the Texans won on Thanksgiving convincingly, I was like, oh man, can we get like Colts -1 here? Like that'd be sweet. Unfortunately, it's Colts -3, which is like it's good to get like this half point to get the 3 because I think Indianapolis winning by 3 is the most likely result of this game. So to get that when you're going -3, that's pretty huge. Like there's a reason why 3.5 is the least likely to hit like of all the spreads out there. So -3 is important. I was just hoping to get a better number. But overall, I completely agree with what you said. I mean, if Ryan Kelly comes back, that's going to be enormous because they have to go against J.J. Watt and Whitney Merciless, and to have like 2 missing offensive linemen against that, I think that's just going to be too difficult for Philip Rivers, who really needs good pass protection at this point in his career. It'll help that Bradley Roby's out. Rivers doesn't really target his receivers as much as other quarterbacks, but still, like Roby missing is pretty big. And then Will Fuller being out. You talked about the stacked injuries at receiver for the Texans. It's like who is Deshaun Watson going to throw to? Because he has Cooks still, but Cooks is going to be covered by Xavier Rhodes. So who's he going to throw to? Like Cutie, he has Jordan Akins who dropped 2 touchdowns. He has Duke Johnson. Like these guys aren't that good. Cutie's okay, and like Akins has some talent, but like there's no one proven here outside of Cooks, and Cooks is going to see tough coverage. So you have to wonder how the Texans are going to move the ball, especially if Buckner comes back. So I want to bet the Colts a lot. Like I really do. I think getting the -3 instead of the 3.5 is enormous. But I need to see Kelly come back, and I need to see Buckner come back, and plus they had a couple of other minor injuries. I want to see the Colts a lot healthier. If we do see that, I'm going to bet pretty big on the Colts.
Yeah, I think I would be right there with you if they do, because I'm big on the Colts, and I think they'll bounce back. Good teams coming off a blowout tend to do that, especially with good coaches. And no, I do not want Jack Hughes to be back. The fact that he fired like a very well-respected PR executive too recently because she wasn't a culture fit. So if you're a culture coach and you're firing someone who's universally respected, that's usually not a good sign. But anyway, circling back, I think the Colts are just the right side. I think the Texans have played well lately, but the receiving stuff is massive problem because I like Cutie, but he's a guy who catches a lot of short passes. Like you can't just dink and dunk the length of the field with him, and you can just double Cooks, and they're gonna have so much trouble moving the ball. So yeah, the Colts are the right side if they're healthy.
Yeah, it's a shame. I wanted to see Romeo Crennel make a run, in his last head coaching stint, but doesn't look like it's going to happen with these 2 suspensions. All right, next game, Jaguars at the Vikings. This line opened up Vikings -9. It's up to 9.5. So who do you like here?
I'm on the Jaguars here, I think. And look, I know the Jaguars are bad, and the Vikings have played better as of late, but this just seems like a lot to be giving the Vikings to me. The Jaguars still have some offensive weapons. Mike Glennon took advantage of them against the Browns. I know Cleveland was without their 2 best defenders, Myles Garrett and Denzel Ward. So that helped to make him look good. But I don't think the Vikings have a great defense either. They have a couple of good linebackers. Eric Kendricks and Eric Wilson are playing very good this year. And they have some good safeties, but their cornerback position has been a disaster this year. And the Jaguars, if DJ Chark comes back, they have DJ Chark, they have Laviska Shenault, they have Keelan Cole, and Chris Conley's hurt. But if he's back, he could also be good. And Colin Johnson. So they have a lot of receiving weapons. And James Robinson has played well at running back. So they have the makings of a solid offense. So when they're playing against weaker defenses, and I don't think that the Vikings are strong cornerback or on the defensive line, they can make some noise and at least score some points and possibly stay in the game. I think Glennon gives him a better chance to do that than Jake Luton because, Glennon's been around and at least has experience. And we know the Vikings are going to score on the Jaguars. Their defense isn't very good right now, and they're pretty banged up as a whole. But I'm just not sold that they're going to be able to contain the Jaguars on defense enough to get close to a 10-point cover. And the Jaguars, this was a surprising number that I felt the need to include. They're 5-6 against the spread this year, which is pretty unbelievable to me, just because they've lost every game except the one that we really needed them not to. So, while I think that the Vikings could do well in this one, I think the Jaguars are going to cover here. And at the very least, they should have a chance at a backdoor cover unless there's a surprising blowout. So I'm going to be on the Jaguars here, 1 to 2 units, maybe, unless the injury report is much worse than I'm expecting it to be.
Yeah, how funny is it that their only win came, that really cost everyone in the survivor pools, and it's that win is going to cost them Trevor Lawrence. Like that's so huge. So really have to feel for Jaguar fans because that win looked nice at the time, and then they kept the game close against Tennessee. You're like, wait, is this team good? And like, no, they're not. They're 1-10. But what you said about them covering the spread a lot, like, is accurate, and they've done so a lot recently. Since week 7, they've only lost by more than 10 only once. Again, that was against the Steelers. And, I don't think the Vikings are as good as the Steelers. Like, call me crazy. But, I mean, the Vikings, 2 weeks ago, the Vikings lost to the Cowboys. And last week, the Vikings almost lost to the Panthers. And they would have lost if Teddy Bridgewater hits DJ Moore in the end zone at the end. So I'm right there with you. Like, this screams like backdoor cover, doesn't it? Like, feels like the Jaguars should be able to move the ball against the Viking defense missing 6 starters. If DJ Chark is back, like, that's gonna be enormous. And Jacksonville's offensive line is like actually pretty decent. It's like not as horrible as it used to be. So Glenn should see plenty of protection. He should be able to move the ball. And actually, it wouldn't even surprise me if the Jaguars have the lead in like the second half. The Vikings as large favorites like this, like I like Mike Zimmer as a coach, but when he's been favored by this many points, he hasn't really done that well. Over the past 3 years, when he's favored by 9 or more, he's 1-3-2 against the spread, which is kind of weird. He lost outright when he was favored by 16.5 against Buffalo a couple years ago. Last year, when he was favored by 10, he almost lost to Minnesota. It was like a last-second touchdown for the Vikings to win against Denver. He almost lost to Denver. So last-second touchdown from Minnesota to win. So I think this could be like one of those lazy games, because after this game, the Vikings have to play the Buccaneers and then the rival Bears and then the Saints. So it's going to be pretty tough for the Vikings to be focused against this team. Then again, like, maybe having lost to Dallas a couple weeks ago will make them focus, but I still think that there's a chance that they're going to overlook the Jaguars. So I like the Jaguars as well. It really depends on, if Chark comes back and stuff like that. But Sidney Jones is another player I think we need to play. So if those two guys come back, I may bet the Jaguars for a couple units, maybe 3 or 4 even.
Yeah, I think Chark's the most important one for me because we've seen how different offenses are without their number one receivers this year, especially. And I think Glennon has the ability to take advantage of him more than Jake Luton was able to. And, Gardner Minshew had some games where he could take advantage of Chark, but he likes to spread the ball around more than I would think Glennon would. So that'll be the big one I'm watching. But I'm glad we agree on this one, because when I was picking this one, I'm like, oh, I feel like I'm either going to be like dead agreement on this one, or it's going to be like, you are so horribly wrong, Jacob. You're going to get this one wrong.
Speaking of dead agreements, I think we've agreed on every game so far. So we'll see. Let's see how long that streak lasts this week. The next game, Raiders at the Jets. This line opened up Raiders -8. It's down to 7.5. So who do you like here?
This is another game that I was hoping the line was going to move more after the Falcons crushed the Raiders. Great pick on my part, -3 Raiders there. That looks really smart in retrospect. But, I'm going to be on the Raiders here. I don't know how much I'm going to bet on this game yet, because I don't like the number. I want it to get better, but I don't know I doubt it will, because it's the Jets. But my logic is the Raiders have to play mad. They just got crushed by the Falcons. It was an embarrassment. Now they're behind in the playoff race. They're still alive. They're still certainly alive, but they have to play better. And this is the most winnable game left on their schedule by a good margin. And they were flat against the Falcons, which you called from a mile away, and I did not think that was going to happen. But lo and behold, they were. So I think the Raiders are going to have the motivational edge, but I do think that the Jets have some talent. Like, they have some really good receiving weapons. I really like what Rashad Perriman, Denzel Mims, and Jamison Crowder are doing. I think if they had a quarterback who was either healthy, confident, or, talented, they would be in good shape. Sam Darnold checks one of those boxes, and it is the talented part, but he's just not confident or healthy. So kind of takes away his ability. So I think that they can keep it close because the Raiders don't have particularly good defense. But at the same time, the Raiders can't look ahead. They can't blow this game. And I think they know that. So I could see them coming in here and just blowing out the Jets, and the Jets being like just folding if they get down like multiple scores. So this game could really go either way. I feel like the Jets have to have one more close competitive game at some point. I don't know when that'll be. But I'm going to be on the Raiders here right now. I'll probably say 0 to 2 units. I'm not super confident in this number. I don't like it being above 7 because the Jets just get so many key numbers and potential backdoor covers. So I'm a little worried about that, but I just think that the Raiders, they need this game, so they should hypothetically win this big.
Yeah, I can see that happening. So this is gonna be our first disagreement, but I'm not like I'm not very confident in this pick. There are a couple of things that bother me about the Raiders. Like, one is that John Gruden just hasn't really figured out how to win in early 1 p.m. Games yet. It seems like every other coach has been able to do that pretty well. Like every other active coach on the West Coast has a winning record in these games. John Gruden's 3-7 against the spread in these early start games. So he just hasn't done well. Not that means he can't win this game by double digits. Like, he certainly can. And I agree with what you said. Like, the Raiders are definitely going to play a lot harder this week than they did last week. But I think with that combined with the fact that the Jets might be fully healthy on offense for the first time under Darnold, I think that, I think that's important. Like, people are saying, I don't know who the announcer was, but someone was saying, this is the first time Darnold has a fully healthy receiving core this year. They were talking about that last week. And I was thinking, like, yeah, but they're missing 3 offensive linemen. So, like, does it really matter? And they barely scored against the Dolphins, but it sounds like they might get everyone back. Like, Alex Lewis was questionable heading into the game, which I don't understand, like, why he missed that game, because it was a non-injury and he was limited Friday, and then he was out. Like, I still don't know what that was. Someone, a friend of mine said he probably got into a bar fight or something, but Alex Lewis should be back. George Fant might be back. If those two guys play, Darnold's going to have his full complement for the first time all year. So I think I want to pick that. But then again, the Jets defense is just marred with injuries. Like, their 2 top corners are out. The 2 top linebackers are out. They still haven't recovered from trading Jamal Adams. Their defensive line is good, but that's about it. So I'm going to be on the Jets, but if the Jets are still missing several offensive linemen, I'm going to be with you on the Raiders.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Part of me wants to bet the Jets at some point, like I said, because I do think that they're going to be, they're going to have a good future once they get a new head coach and probably a new quarterback at this point. I think Darnold needs a change of scenery more than anything else. I do think he still has a chance to become a good starting quarterback, but they're obviously probably going to get Trevor Lawrence. So you get him, that offense looks pretty good. And if you can get a good coach, preferably of either a young upcoming offensive coach or a veteran coach, like what we see Ron Rivera doing in Washington this year, who could just come in, straighten things out there quick and get them on track, I think this team will be good. But we got to get Gase out first.
Well, not so fast. I saw a report in the New York Post that said Gase is planning on coaching the Jets in 2021. And I saw that. I'm like, on Madden, like when's he going to be coaching the Jets? I really don't understand how that's going to.
I'm also planning on being Miss America, but I don't see that happening anytime soon. So,
that's true. Karen asks, what happened to her Raiders last week? I actually said it on the podcast, and then I switched my pick to the Raiders. So don't congratulate me for that. I thought they were going to be very flat. At like the Chiefs game was their Super Bowl. And they lost, and I thought they're going to be deflated, but I ended up switching to the Raiders because Julio Jones was out, and I was like, how's Atlanta going to score without Julio Jones? And like, even though they had 43 points, they actually didn't even score that much. It was just the Raiders giving them free points all afternoon. There's just a very sloppy game by the Raiders. You'd think they had won their Super Bowl rather than lost. Like if they had beaten the Chiefs, I'd be like, okay, I can understand why they were so flat. They were just celebrating. Like they lost the Chiefs. Like you can't keep losing. Like just can't do it. So yeah, this is pretty much it. So next game, speaking of the Falcons, the Saints at the Falcons. This line opened up Saints -3. It's still 3. So who do you like here?
Yeah, so I'm on the Saints for now, but that has the big asterisk next to it. If Julio Jones doesn't play, I'm going to be on the Saints. If he does play, I may switch sides on this one. I'm interested to see how Taysom Hill does in this one because, I mean, last week they played the Broncos. They didn't have to do anything. The Broncos were starting a 5th-string quarterback who was really a receiver at the position. So Taysom just had to hand the ball off a lot and run in the red zone and throw for 78 yards. But he's looked pretty good so far, I've thought, or at least last time he played the Falcons, he looked good. So I want to see if he can repeat that performance. I think the Saints will be motivated to win in a rivalry game because if they win this one, they go up 3 games and a tiebreaker on the Bucs. So they'll basically wrap up the division. You know, a lot of people probably feel like they already have wrapped it up, but, you know, that would just give them that extra, like, hey, we're in really good shape now. We don't have to worry about that. We can focus on the 1 seed. So they'll be motivated. But I think the Falcons are going to be motivated too. They're going to want revenge. I'm not convinced that the Saints are not going to be ready for this game, though. Like, you know, if they had a tough opponent last week or a tough opponent coming up, I could see them overlooking the Falcons and just saying like, all right, we just got to focus on these tougher games down the stretch. But they literally just played like a JV game against the Broncos, and now they get to take on a rival, potential to sweep them and potential to basically wrap up the division. So I think all those factors make me want to go with the Saints if Julio Jones is out. If Julio Jones is in, I think that the Falcons will be motivated to do better, and they'll have a chance to, score a bunch on New Orleans and make this kind of a little bit of a shootout. So I'm on the Saints now, might switch to the Falcons depending on the injury report.
Yeah, I like Atlanta a lot more. It really depends on Julio Jones, of course. Like if Julio's out again, I'll probably switch back like I did last week and go against the Falcons. But with Julio Jones on the field this year, like for a full game, the Falcons are right now they're 3-2 straight up and 4-1 against the spread, or 4-2 against the spread, 3-3 straight up. If it wasn't for that crazy Cowboys comeback and Todd Gurley at the goal line, they'd be 5-1 straight up and against the spread with Julio Jones playing the full game. So I think with that in mind, as well as the fact that I actually disagree with you about saying the Saints are going to be focused. Like they could be, but they just beat this team in a blowout 2 weeks ago. It's like, how do you take the Falcons seriously? I know they just had an easy game. But it was across the country. Now they have to fly back and like to take on a team they just beat. Like, I just don't know where their motivation is. Like, I feel like Atlanta's going to be more motivated than anything. And the Saints are just way ahead in the division. Like, even if they lose this game, I don't think Tampa's catching them. They swept Tampa. So the Tampa would have to pass them. So I don't think that's going to happen. So I think there is a good chance the Saints might overlook the Falcons, but what really gets me here is that I think this line doesn't make sense to me. If you think about it, like Atlanta or New Orleans was -4.5 at home against Atlanta. And if you move that line, like 2 points to neutral, it used to be 3. Let's just call it 2 because there's no fans. Move it 2 to neutral and then 2 to Atlanta. You get New Orleans -0.5. And yet New Orleans is -3 here. So it's like this line really hasn't moved as much as it should have. Now, like Julio Jones I think is playing a factor in that. But if Julio Jones plays, like I really don't see this line moving off 3. Like maybe it will, but like maybe 2.5 at most. So either way, like this line just seems too high. And I think this is going to be a 3-point game either way. I think if Julio plays, if Julio's on the field, I think either team is going to win by 3. So with that in mind, I'm going to take the win or the push with Atlanta.
Yeah, you make a good case about the line there. So I might think about switching to the Falcons eventually. For me, it's just Julio makes such a big difference in that offense, but the motivation case you make is good too. Just like my head, I'm always like, I never think anything's locked up until it's like, all right, we're mathematically certain that we're going to be the number 1 seed or whatever. But I also operate differently than an entire team of football players. So You got me rethinking that one. So I'm a no bet on the Saints right now is what I'll call it. And revisit this one later in the week. See what I'm thinking then.
Yeah, for me, it's TBA. Like, if Julio Jones comes back and this is still a 3, I think I'm going to be on Atlanta for a few units. But like I said, if Julio's out again, like, how do the Falcons move the ball against a really good Saints defense? So we just saw it 2 weeks ago. They scored 9 points, and I think 3 were with Julio. So they're really 6. So anyway, Browns at the Titans. This is I believe this is the last of the early games. So not too many early games this week. So Titans open up -3. They're up to 6. So it looks like a lot of sharp action moving this line in Tennessee's favor. So who do you like in this game?
I like Tennessee. I'm kind of upset that the line has basically doubled since it's come out. Because I would have liked to have faded Tennessee because everyone was going to be like, "Oh, look, they just crushed the Colts. They're going to be so great." But then they're playing the Browns, and I don't trust the Browns. Like, the Browns are 8-3, but I just don't think that they're that good. I think that they're good enough to possibly make the playoffs, but I don't think they're 8-3 good. They're getting Myles Garrett back, which should help them, but the rest of their defense is questionable at best right now. They've been weak up the middle all year, and then they have a ton of injuries in the secondary. Denzel Ward, if he doesn't come back, you're talking about missing him and Greedy Williams against A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, who's having a really nice season. Ryan Tannehill doesn't make many mistakes when throwing, which is weird to say because in Miami, all he did was make mistakes. It's obviously the Adam Gase factor, but he does a really good job of hitting those open receivers, and A.J. Brown's really coming on as of late. So I think they have a massive advantage there. And then on the ground, Derrick Henry has been incredible lately. And I think he might have a little bit more trouble against the Browns because they do have a good defensive front and Garrett's coming back. But still, when Derrick Henry gets going, it is very hard to slow him down or stop him. We saw that in the playoffs last year. He basically carried the Titans to the AFC Championship game. So if the lineup front can get some good blocking and Derrick Henry can just get ahead of steam, I think he can rip off a ton of rushing yards and just make the Browns' life on that side of the ball very difficult. And then on offense, you're talking about the Browns running game, very, very good. But it's not going to be something that constantly wins them games. They may be able to move the ball a lot on the Titans, but after a certain point, you have to use the passing game to get the job done. Mayfield had some good moments last week, and he finally got the ball a lot to Jarvis Landry, which was very helpful. But I'm just not sold that he's going to find another weapon besides Landry. And I think that the Titans can kind of key in on him, take him away, and make other guys make plays. And we haven't seen Mayfield be able to consistently hit other players so far this year. In fact, he's been very inaccurate on some throws. So I'm going to trust Tennessee in this one, probably for just one unit because I'm not a fan of the massive line move. But I just don't trust Cleveland right now. They were just demolished on defense by Mike Glennon. And I mean, I know I was talking him up a few picks ago, but it's still Mike Glennon. He could do well against bad defenses. But anyway.
You're not big on Kadero Hodge and Rashard Higgins?
No, I can't say that I am. I like playing them when they were like very cheap in DraftKings showdowns. But as my number 2 or 3 receiver, no thank you.
Yeah, they're $200 players on DraftKings. They shouldn't be operating as like major players. And Baker Mayfield missed so many throws last week, like so many easy throws, like should have made. Like for some reason he's throwing off his back foot sometimes. Still, it's just like a bad sign for his progression. It just don't like how he's developing, and I feel like he's going to have to engage in a shootout in this game because, like you said, Tennessee has such a big advantage at receiver with A.J. Brown and Corey Davis, going against a Cleveland team that like missing his top 2 corners, and it doesn't sound like Denzel Ward's going to play. They called it a multi-week injury. And like, granted, like he could come back earlier than expected. Like that's happened before. But even if he does, he may not be 100%. So it's going to be tough for the Browns to stop the pass. And, even though this line has moved up a lot, like the advanced line was 3.5 and now it's 6. The computer model says this line should be 10. So the computer model, as much flack as the Browns get from everyone else who hate them for being 8-3, computer model like completely despises them. So I actually agree. I actually have the Chargers ranked ahead of the Browns in my power rankings, even though the Chargers are 3-8, which is like, it's angered some Cleveland fans. But once the Browns start losing and they don't get to beat up on the barely beat the Eagles and the Jaguars and the Bengals, I think they'll see the light. So I'm going to be on Tennessee. But yeah, with this line move, it's not great. So I'm probably not going to bet this game.
Yeah, I don't hate the Chargers in front of the Browns. I can understand why people, if they were just looking at the records, they'd be like, "Oh, we're 8-3," but like you got to look at the Chargers. Like they've had so many close games that have just been blown by coaching decisions. In their game last week, like they could have ruined the Bills cover that I had, but they decided to randomly run it with no time left, and it's like those are the coaching decisions that. I mean, they were probably going to lose that game anyway, but those are the decisions that are like, oh yeah, that would definitely lose the game if you tried that like down 7.
They ran twice,
yeah,
with no time left. No timeouts, no time left. They just ran twice. Like, how do you not throw there? Whatever. I don't understand. I really don't get what Anthony Lynn's doing. I like seems like a nice guy, but he might be the worst clock management coach in the history of the NFL. Like, as we've seen some beauties over the years, but like. He oh man, he just burns timeouts like randomly. Like it just doesn't seem like he knows like what's happening. I could like the indecision's crazy. Like I could see him like still deciding on like what to call, and like there's like zeros on the clock, and they're like, "Coach, the game's over." He's like, "Should we run the ball?" Like it's just like that's how he coaches. Like it's just you have to make a decision, and you have to make the right one. He just can't do it, and it's a shame because like I said, he's like a nice guy, but the Chargers can't have him coach again next year. They just have to move on, I think. Anyway, it's going at the late afternoon slate. The Giants at the Seahawks. There's no line on this game right now because we don't know if Daniel Jones is going to play. The look ahead line on this game was Seahawks -7.5. So if you want to use that as a barometer. Anyway, so who do you like? What are your thoughts on this game?
Yeah, so first of all, I don't think Daniel Jones will play. It sounds like he's going to be out at least a week, maybe more. So we're going to probably see Colt McCoy. I imagine if the look headline was 7.5, I imagine it'll get probably to 10. That's how I would see it. I think it reaches double digits no matter what, because Colt McCoy is not a very good quarterback anymore. He was once one of the better quarterbacks in the league, but the whole problem with McCoy is he's never had a strong arm. So he had to rely entirely on, throwing the ball short, dinking and dunking down the field, getting the balls in the hands of his playmakers. And I don't think that's going to work well with this Giants team against the Seahawks team. The Seahawks are not going to be threatened by the deep ball, even though that's been a weakness of theirs this year. They've not been great against the pass consistently. They're not going to be afraid of Colt McCoy like they weren't afraid of Carson Wentz on Monday night. They will get a lot of pressure with him. They'll put Jamal Adams all over the place to get in his line of vision, to pressure him, do all sorts of stuff like that. So I think the Seahawks hypothetically should, if this line is double digits, have a good chance to cover. Especially, I think their offense is operating very well right now. We saw DK Metcalf just annihilate Darius Slay in single coverage last night. So I think that I think that they'll be good on that side of the ball. I just have two important injury questions. Mike Iupati left the game very late last night. Nursed what was looking like an injury, so he managed to get to the sideline. So I just want to check to be sure he's okay because he's important for that offensive line. Defensive line, I saw that Carlos Dunlap was getting an MRI. If he is out, the pass rush for the Seahawks, it's not going to be nearly as strong. So I could see Colt McCoy like very slowly but surely moving the ball down the field and getting a couple of scores and making it hard for the Seahawks to cover a 10-point line. Or maybe he gets a backdoor cover like Carson Wentz and the Eagles did. So I still like the Seahawks, but those two questions, especially Dunlap, I'll need to see answers to before deciding on this game. And of course, we'll see what the line is.
Yeah, those two injuries are important. Daniel Jones being out is kind of a heartbreaker because I had the Giants 18-1 to win the division. And when I saw this game and the Seahawks coming off a Monday night game, I was like, oh, maybe the Giants can steal this one. They've been playing better. Seahawks off short rest, not really playing that sharp. Like right now, they left a lot of points on the field against the Eagles. Just like those weird fourth down calls. Like, why are you running jet sweeps with David Moore? Like, you have Metcalf and Lockett and Russell Wilson. Like, use those guys. Like, why are you running with Carlos Hyde 15 times? Like, I don't understand this play calling. So I thought the Giants with Daniel Jones could have a chance to win this game. But with Colt McCoy, it's just rough. Like, I mean, you said it perfectly. Like, the Seahawks' biggest weakness is the deep ball, and Colt McCoy can't take advantage of that. So I imagine I'm going to be on the Seahawks unless this number is like out of control, like above 14. I think it's going to be, I would put it probably like 11 and a half. And even then, I would take Seattle.
Yeah, I think 11 and a half is probably the right number. I was debating between whether going 3 or 4 points at first, but I think McCoy's arm is weak enough that I would go 4 on that.
Yeah, that makes sense. So we'll have to see what this line is and who's going to play for Seattle. But like I said, it would take a lot for me to get on the Giants. Like, it would not only would those players have to be out for Seattle, like we'd have to have a couple more injuries, and this line would have to be very high. Like, that's what it would take for me to be on the Giants. So anyway, Rams at the Cardinals. This line opened up Rams -1.5. It's up to 3. Lots of public action coming in on the Rams, which is not surprising. Given that they've won some big games recently, not last week, but they beat the Buccaneers and the Seahawks. So who do you like in this game?
About the only thing that went right for me last week was sticking with my 49ers plus 6 or 7 pick or whatever it ended up being. I bet it at them winning. I was very happy about that. I want to like the Rams more in this game, but I don't. And I think that's a good sign. I've had a lot of trouble with the Rams this year. So I'm on the Cardinals here. And look, I know that the Rams have Aaron Donald, and he'll be able to get pressure on Kyler Murray. And then you have Jalen Ramsey, who will be able to take away DeAndre Hopkins a good amount in this game. So you've got some tough matchups that the Cardinals are going to have to figure out a way to deal with. But I just think that if Kyler Murray can get a little bit healthier and, can avoid falling victim to the blitz as much as he has the last few weeks, I think he's going to be better. I think the shoulder was still bothering him, even just a tiny bit against New England. Hopefully with another week, he'll be feeling a little better there and be able to throw better on the Rams. But I think his mobility will give the Rams some trouble if they can negate the blitz, the Cardinals, that is. And then defensively, I think the Cardinals, they're not great, but we've seen Jared Goff just struggle immensely at times against, it could be a terrible opponent. He'll struggle against them. He can play elite against elite opponents. He's one of the weirdest quarterbacks ever. Just whatever Jared Goff you get that day, that's Jared Goff you're going to get all day. I can't really even describe it. So I like the Cardinals. I think that them playing as 3-point underdogs at home is pretty good. I think that they're closer to evenly matched with the Rams because of Kyler Murray's dynamic ability. And the Rams are playing on Thursday night, and they're playing the Patriots. And, I know the Patriots aren't very good this year, but that's a rematch of the Super Bowl from a couple years ago that may still be sitting with a few guys. They may be looking ahead to that game as a Super Bowl rematch, and they'll be looking ahead to it anyway because it's on Thursday. So I think between all those factors and Arizona being a home dog, I'm going to be on them in this one for a few units.
Yeah, I like the Cardinals a lot. Actually, this might end up being my pick of the month if we get some good injury news for the Cardinals. And I think Kyler Murray will be healthier this week. The shoulder, like you said, like a little bit, like it just bothered him a little bit. I think what bothered him more was Bill Belichick. It looked like hesitant to throw sometimes, like he didn't know what he was seeing. It's kind of like indicative of how young quarterbacks play against Belichick. So that was not a surprise. So, while the Rams have a good defense, he's not going to be playing against Belichick on the other side. So I think Kyler Murray will play a lot better in this game, especially at home. So with that in mind, I like Arizona a lot. And I was looking at the spread and it kind of hit me that this line makes zero sense. If you think about it, the Cardinals were favored against the Dolphins and the Bills at home, right? And they beat the Bills. They lost the Dolphins, so fine. They went 1-1 against them. And yet the Rams are favored by 3 in Arizona. The Bills and the Dolphins are better than the Rams. They beat the Rams. And that was when the Rams had Andrew Whitworth. So why are the Rams favored by 3 when the Bills and the Dolphins were underdogs in Arizona? That makes zero sense to me at all. I think it's because, like I said before, the Rams had some really keystone victories against the Buccaneers and the Seahawks, and people remember that. And I think they're willing to give the Rams the benefit of the doubt because from the loss to the Niners. But I think those wins were misleading because the Buccaneers, they didn't have Ali Marpet and they lost Donovan Smith for a while. He came back, but he wasn't 100%. And then against the Seahawks, like Russell Wilson was not himself. And like the Seahawks really haven't played all that well, in the past few weeks anyway. So I think those two wins were misleading. And I think the Cardinals loss to New England was misleading because it was a young quarterback going against Belichick, which is like, they almost always fail. So with that in mind, like I think we're getting great value on the Cardinals. I think the Cardinals should be favored by 3. I think the wrong team is favored. And I think, the two most likely results of this game, Cardinals winning by 3 and Rams winning by 3. At +3, we get the win or the push. So, with all that in mind, I love Arizona.
Yeah, you definitely make a good case for it. And if you look at that New England game last week too, the Cardinals left some serious points on the board before halftime. They decided to go for it on 4th down from the goal line. A good choice, but Kenyon Drake just didn't get in. If they get in there or they kick the field goal, then we're talking about Cam Newton and the Patriots having to drive for a game-tying field goal late as opposed to, going for the game winner. So we could have a really different viewpoint of this line in that case. And the Rams win over the Bucks. I mean, I think we all know what that one was about. Tom Brady has to be in bed by 9:15. If he's not, he turns back into a pumpkin. So that seems to be the case this year, why they haven't done well in prime time. But yeah, no, I'll be joining you on the Cardinals. I'm glad I finally have a big bet in this slate, and I'm glad you're in on it too.
Yeah, that's the best explanation I've heard for Brady, why he struggled. So hopefully in the playoffs, the Buccaneers get all afternoon games, until the Super Bowl. Like he might be in trouble there. That missed 4th down, that was huge. Like that drive began with like 7 minutes left in the second quarter. Like that drive lasted forever. And they just got nothing on it. Like that was so deflating. And then they missed a field goal like right before New England's final possession. So like if they kick those 2 field goals, they win the game. And like I think we're looking at this game a lot differently if that were the case. So anyway, next game is Eagles at the Packers. This line opened up Packers -7. It's up to 9. So who do you like here?
I like the Packers. I think they're playing some of their best football right now. And the huge advantage, though, is Carson Wentz is playing so poorly. He's been sacked 46 times this year, and he's thrown 15 interceptions. I parrot those numbers every week, and they continue to be the league leading numbers every week. They change every time, obviously, but he just is not playing well at all. He doesn't have any confidence, and it's not entirely his fault. He doesn't have any blocking. His receivers can't separate, but after a certain point, you have to stop making mistakes, or you have to just find a way to move the ball on offense. The Eagles haven't done that. Carson Wentz hasn't done that. Doug Peterson hasn't done it. The Packers, I think, are rounding into form on defense, too. They got a lot of pressure on the Bears last week. And I know it's the Bears and it's Trubisky, but frankly speaking, Carson Wentz has looked a lot closer to Mitch Trubisky form than the former MVP type form he had. So I think that with the bad blocking in Philly and with Wentz's confidence shaken, I think that the Packers are going to get a ton of pressure on him. Aaron Rodgers has, I think, 5 passing touchdown games on the year. So they'll be able to throw all over the Eagles defense, which has not played bad. They actually played pretty well against the Seahawks, came up with some key stops. But like you said, the Seahawks left a lot of points on the board between the missed 4th down at the goal line on the jet sweep to David Moore, which was a very terrible play. And then, the one closer to field goal range. They weren't quite there yet, but if they call good there, they get at least 10 more points probably. I mean, they left a ton of points on the board. The Packers won't. I just think that they'll cover this easily. So I have the Packers for 2 units right now, and I wrote that it's to earn redemption for the stupid Miles Sanders 2-point conversion. And if Doug Peterson would please stop going for 2 randomly for no reason. Like, I get it. There are analytical strategies in game where it makes sense. But when there's 12 seconds left and you're probably not going to get the onside kick, and even if you just kick the ball, you're still going to have a chance to win if you do get the onside kick. Just don't go for 2. It just makes me very upset because I lose in multiple ways in my bets.
Or how about if you're down 11 and you have a 4th down, you kick a field goal to make it a 1-score game like that? I think that's a good strategy. Yeah. It's so infuriating. My dad last night, so he lost the bet on the Eagles or the Seahawks. He had -6.5. He was angry and he said, "Oh, that game was fixed." And I'm like, "Well, that ricochet Hail Mary was a hell of a fix. Like, that's like how do you pull that off? Like that's very impressive, like choreography." So Anyway, with that in mind, Andrew said in the comments, he says the Eagles are a broken team. And like, from stock trading a lot, like I find myself comparing some of these teams to stocks. And like the Eagles to me seem like Enron or Nikola, like these completely fraud companies that should be, Nikola should be bankrupt. Enron eventually went bankrupt. Like the Eagles this year, if you count them as 5.5 point dogs, which is like what the super contest was and like what I got the number at, they'd be 3-9 against the spread this year. So if you just faded them just blindly, you'd be 9-3 against the spread. And the 3 covers they had, one was against Nick Mullins when Mullins was an 8-point favorite at home for some reason. The second one was that bogus backdoor cover against the Ravens when the Ravens were up double digits the entire second half. The Eagles got some lucky penalties and they got the game close. And then the third game was, remember that Sunday night game where they were like barely beating Dallas even though Ben DiNucci was playing, and then like DiNucci fumbled in the fourth quarter. It was returned for a touchdown. Like that's the Eagles cover. Like that's how the Eagles have covered the spread this year. Maybe they got another backdoor cover. It could happen. And with this high number, it's certainly like there's certainly a risk whenever you go above 7. But like the Packers just seem they're just so much better than the Eagles. Like the Eagles have offensive line injuries, like with the Packers should be able to take advantage of. They won't be able to run block as well. So like the Packers' one weakness is the run defense. And I don't know if the Eagles can run that well against them. Like Sanders might get a nice run here and there. But like it's gonna be tough for them to do it consistently. So I think that this line is, I think this line should be higher. I think it should be in double digits. And I like the Packers.
Yeah, there's really no reason not to at this point. Aaron Rodgers is having one hell of a season, and he's making a real push for MVP too. And don't think he doesn't know that too, because like I'm still hearkening back to them drafting Jordan Love. It's turned out to be a good move because it sparked Aaron Rodgers to play so well. And by good move, I mean in the worst possible way. Like they could have made their team better and had this type of season. Like they just lucked into some motivation.
Yeah, I think if they had Chase Claypool, they'd be looking a lot better. But there is something to that. Like he does have this sort of like different vibe to him this year, where he has a killer instinct back, where he didn't really have that last year. I think him being healthy, for a while, for the first time in a long time, I think that has something to do with it too. But like you called it though, like you said that would motivate him a lot, and like from week 1, you said Rodgers is going to be out for blood against the Vikings, and like he killed him in that game, and like it's a great call on your part. If it weren't for Mahomes, he would definitely be the MVP front runner right now.
Yeah, and I don't get a lot right, but thank you very much. And we'll see how that MVP race shakes out because I got money on Rodgers, so fingers crossed that he keeps doing well.
Yeah, well, I'll be rooting for you. My MVP pick of Tom Brady's not going to work out. What betting site do I use? Bookmaker.eu is the best one. I used to use 5 Dimes as well, but they don't allow betting in America anymore. So Bookmaker is the best. Both you and I use Bovada, which is like pretty decent. BetUS is okay. And of course you have FanDuel and DraftKings. So those are the 5 sports books that I have. You just use Bovada, right? Do you have any other accounts?
I don't have any other accounts right now. Just got Bovada. I'm waiting to see if Massachusetts gets any legal sports gambling here, and then I'll probably do FanDuel and or DraftKings. Okay,
makes sense. All right, the last of the late afternoon games, the Patriots at the Chargers. This line opened up Chargers -2.5, and now it's a pick 'em. So who do you like here?
Even with the line move, I like the Patriots, and I hate that because the Patriots aren't playing well right now. But this goes back to something we were talking about earlier. It's Bill Belichick against a rookie quarterback. Belichick's record against, or rather young quarterback, Kyler Murray's not a rookie, but Justin Herbert is. And Bill Belichick's record against rookie quarterbacks, at least before this season, was 19-5 straight up. I don't know what that is against the spread, but he just gives them such a tough time. He throws exotic looks at them, shows them things they've really never seen before, forces them to make quick decisions. Herbert hasn't had that at all this year. And he's having a great year, and he's probably going to win Rookie of the Year, and rightfully so. But I think the Patriots defense is, 1, getting healthier, 2, playing better, and 3, Belichick's going to have some sort of plan and tricks up his sleeve to keep Herbert off balance. I think that'll keep the Chargers from really moving the ball downfield and scoring. I think they're still going to be able to move the ball and get maybe into field goal range on occasion. With Austin Eckler back, they can have just some dump off plays to take pressure off Herbert there. So I think the Chargers will move the ball, but I don't think they're going to score a ton. Meanwhile, the Patriots, they have the formula needed to beat the Chargers. The Chargers have struggled against the run game in recent weeks. We just saw the Bills have Zach Moss and Devin Singletary run for, I think, close to 140 yards on them. And those two haven't really done much at all this year on the ground. So with Damian Harris and James White playing well and Cam Newton being able to carry the ball on the ground, I think that Belichick's going to play a clock control game, just run the ball down the field as much as he can, use a few pass plays here and there to keep the defense off balance. But if he can have a really good run offense in this one, it's going to negate the pressure of Joey Bosa, which is the best player on the LA defense. So I think that if Belichick brings the right coaching plan into this one, which I have no doubt that he will, New England should win this. I just think that they're better coached than Los Angeles. And even if Los Angeles has better personnel, their offense is still young and learning at quarterback. And that's not easy to do against Belichick coach team. So I'm going to be on the Patriots for probably 2 to 3 units here, even with the big line change.
Yeah. What if Anthony Lynn brings in the right coaching plan? Probably
that would be surprising. And I like Anthony Lynn as much as the next guy. I think he's a good offensive mind. He's just, has trouble being a head coach, I think.
Yeah, just a little bit. In a close game, I think I like Belichick over Lynn, and like the Chargers, all they do is lose close games, and like this it feels like this kind of should be a close game. Like all the Patriots games seem to come down to the wire, and I have a lot of faith in Belichick beating Anthony Lynn. What you said about the rookie quarterbacks is like that's my main thesis for liking the Patriots as well. 19-5 is like pretty good, and you said you don't know what the spread record is, and like in this case it doesn't matter because it's a pick'em. So 19-5 straight up, like that's good. That's good enough for me to take the Patriots. It just seems like Justin Herbert has, like you said, he's had some great moments this year, but he's struggled in a couple games recently, like against Brian Flores, like another great defensive minded coach. Last week against Sean McDermott, another great defensive minded coach. Herbert didn't have his best game, and it seems like the Patriots should be able to handle what the Chargers have. Patriots are great against tight ends, so Hunter Henry's not going to do much. Stephon Gilmore finally looks like he's healthy, so I like his chances against Keenan Allen. Like he just did a good job on Hopkins. So it feels like the Patriots match up well against the Chargers all around. So I like the Patriots a lot.
Yeah, it just seems like the right side in this one. I think that they're rounding into form on defense at the right time. It's just a matter of whether or not the offense can do enough to make them competitive in the playoff race. So I'll be eagerly watching that. I don't think they make it this year, but every time I doubt the Patriots, I'm wrong. So we'll see.
Yeah, you can't count out Belichick. And I do like that Cam Newton was upset about the win, like how he performed in the win, and like he apologized to Josh McDaniels, like as he was being congratulated for the win. So I think that is a good sign. Like Newton knows he has to play better, and I think he can play better against this Charger team that's missing some pieces defensively. So
yeah, and I'll just say I think Newton has the right mentality. I kind of always think he has, but like especially we've seen it the last few years when he's been not the same player and recovering from injuries. Like he knows what it takes to be a successful quarterback and an MVP in this league. So the fact that he's not happy with a win because he didn't perform well or isn't at least happy with himself, that, like you said, good sign.
Yeah. Speaking of MVPs in this league, Broncos at the Chiefs. The Chiefs open up -13. They're up to 14 as Patrick Mahomes looks to take the Chiefs to 11-1. So who do you like in this game?
I can't believe you're already calling Drew Lock the MVP. That's a bold take.
Well, you saw what happened without him last week, right?
I know, right? Like Kendall Hinton had started every game, and then Drew Lock came in, he would definitely win MVP. But thankfully, that won't have to happen again. Though I will say, props to Kendall Hinton for handling that situation. That was not easy to do. So, that dude deserves a lot of credit. I will say, I'm actually on the Broncos in this one at +14. Look, on one hand, Patrick Mahomes on fire. Betting against him seems foolish, but on the other hand, the Broncos defense actually played well when these teams first met. People won't realize that because the score of that game was horrible, but Drew Lock just repeatedly turned the ball over. And I think the Chiefs had 2 defensive touchdowns in that one. So they just weren't able to win because of that. The Broncos, that is, they couldn't overcome that. And I think the Broncos are going to be motivated by what happened last week. They're going to look at that and be like, look what the NFL like screwed us over. Like, we had to play this 5th string quarterback, wide receiver from our practice squad who hadn't thrown a pass competitively since 2018 at Wake Forest. Like, I mean, it was ridiculous that they had to do that. And, you know, it is what it is. And teams have had to play without players this season, but like nothing like that. So I think that's going to make Vic Fangio and the guys be like, hey, we got to show well this week and just show like, hey, people who saw us play last week, like you knew what we were going through, but don't think that we're just a bad team anyway. We could have made that game against the Saints competitive. So I think that they'll be competitive against the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to win, but as good as the Chiefs are recently, they haven't been winning by much. They've won their last 3 games by 9 points combined. That was against the Bucs, the Raiders, and the Panthers. So I don't think that the Broncos are quite as good as those teams. But, you know, if you're giving me 14 points on a Broncos team that I don't think is terrible, I don't think they're good, but I don't think they're terrible, I'll take that. I'm going to watch the injury report in this one before I bet it because I know they've been missing a lot of defensive linemen specifically. But with them getting their quarterbacks back, I like this line. So I'll probably be on it for 2 units unless there's a surprise in the injury report.
Yeah, so I had Denver, the last time these teams played in Week 7, and my thesis behind that pick was I thought that with the Chiefs missing 2 offensive linemen, I thought Denver would be able to win in the trenches and really have Patrick Mahomes struggle. And Mahomes actually had his worst game of the year. He only had 200 yards and a touchdown. And yet they got blown out because of like what you said, the 2 touchdowns. It was a 10-6 game, and Denver was driving. So they were down 10-6. They were at midfield. Then Drew Lock throws a pick 6. So 17-6. The next time Denver kicks it away, or I think they punted it, or I forget what happened, but they kicked it away. Then Kansas City scored a special teams touchdown. Suddenly it was like 24-9. And then the Chiefs get another defensive score later in the game. So like that's how that game went. It was an even game before that. Like Denver was doing a great job on Mahomes, and Denver was running the ball like pretty well. And suddenly, because of that huge deficit, they couldn't run anymore. So I think if they have better luck this time with the offensive touchdowns or the defensive touchdowns and special teams touchdowns for the Chiefs, they should be able to hang around and like come within 2 touchdowns. The Chiefs still have those 2 missing offensive linemen, so I think Denver matches up well, like on that side of the ball, and I think Denver should be able to move the chains against the Chiefs, who haven't really played that well defensively recently. So I'm right there with you on the Broncos here. I'm just like you're braver than I am. I don't know if I can bet on Drew Lock, but I do think Denver is the right side.
Yeah, no, and I might be a little bit crazy for saying 2 units because, like, part of me's terrified to bet against Patrick Mahomes with how he's playing. But I'm also kind of on the I want Aaron Rodgers to win MVP thing. So I'm like, hey, maybe this will be the game where Patrick Mahomes doesn't look that great. So, and I love betting against double-digit lines, and when it's like 2 touchdown lines, I will gladly take some action on it. So I guess I got 1 or 2 units, but we might be back here next week, me being like, man, I can't believe I bet against Patrick Mahomes. Like, who let me do that? Like, I have that like every week though.
Yeah, that's it always feels you always feel the dumbest person in the world when you're like, I'm gonna take Drew Lock against Patrick Mahomes. Let's see what happens now. And yeah, you feel really dumb when Mahomes lights up the scoreboard and gets 5 touchdowns and 400 yards, and you're like, oh my God, like the Broncos lost 49-10. What a dumb play that was. But I do think the Denver is the right side here. And I will say that, like, I don't know if the motivation is going to be here for the Chiefs. Like they just had 2 big wins. Like the Raiders are the closest team to them in the division. They won in Vegas. And then the next game, they beat the Buccaneers on the road as well. So like they crushed Denver earlier in the year. So you have to wonder like where the motivation is going to be. I feel like the Chiefs will probably take them for granted and kind of like sneak out like a 7 or 10 point win.
Yeah, that sounds about right to me, especially if they look back and they're like, oh yeah, they got crushed by the Saints. They're good and don't really pay attention to what else happened.
Yeah. How are you guys doing in the contest? So our combined entry is like 260th in the contest. Yeah, I'm tied for fifth in the gold. So I'm pretty close. I think I'm 2.5 behind the leader. I think so. Kind of pretty close. I will say the leader in the regular contest is 3 points ahead of second place. So it's gonna be pretty tough to catch that guy. But I think second place is still alive for me in the regular contest. But need some good weeks to close out the year. All right, so we have 2 Monday night games. The first one, Redskins at the Steelers. It looks like this one will be at 5 o'clock unless it's moved it again. And given the Steelers' luck, it might be. So there's no line on this game because the Wednesday game hasn't taken place yet. I will say though, at 5 dimes, this is the only sports book that has the spread, which you can't bet in America. But right now it says Steelers minus 10.5. So let's just go with that, I guess. So who do you like in this game?
Yeah, I think 10.5 is probably about right. I actually like Washington to cover here. The Steelers are playing on short rest this week, and Washington will have the maximum amount of rest possible because they played Thursday and then Monday, which is what the Steelers were supposed to have, but we won't talk about that too much. I think the Steelers are going to be so focused on just crushing the Ravens. Like they are very angry at the Ravens. They're already a divisional rival, and then the game's been moved so many times because of them. They lost their bye week. They're going to spill blood in the water, and they're going to crush the Lamar Jackson-less Ravens, or so we think. So I think they're going to expend a ton of energy in that game, look ahead and say, oh, Washington's not that good. They're 4-7. Like, they're nothing. Like, they're not even a division. They're not even in our conference. We're not going to see them again for a long time. But in reality, Washington's kind of in the thick of the division race. They're kind of on the rise. They're a young team that's very well coached under Ron Rivera. They have an excellent defensive line that should be able to get some pressure on Ben Roethlisberger. So I think they can limit the Steelers' offense. It's just a matter of whether or not they can move the ball on the Steelers' defense. I think if Antonio Gibson keeps playing well and Terry McLaurin can get open a bunch, I think we'll be talking about Washington keeping this close. And who knows, maybe they'll be the team that pulls off the unlikely upset of the undefeated team in the league. It always seems to be like the team we least expect is the one that beats the undefeated team. So I'm going to be on Washington here, probably at 1 unit for now. I'm not super confident in it. I need to see how the Steelers do, first of all, and if there's any new injury news. But I think this just shapes up well for Washington to cover. So I have some good faith in them this week.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously we have to see a line. We have to see who's going to play. But right now I'm leaning toward the Steelers. And do you know that, like, do you remember the last time the Redskins have played a team that has a winning record right now? Like,
boy,
it's been a while.
Yeah, it has been a really long time. I know they've played a bunch of NFC East teams recently. Was it the Rams by chance? Was that the last one? Yeah.
Week 5 against the Rams, and they lost 30-10 at home. So I don't know. I feel like their 4-7 record is kind of like a house of cards, and I feel like I really don't trust it. And if you think about it, teams in the NFC East outside of the division, they're 9-17 against the spread this year. And I think, like, if you think about it logically, it kind of makes sense because the Washington's their 4 wins this year have been against Cincinnati. Okay, so they lost Joe Burrow. Their other 3 wins were against the Eagles and the Cowboys twice. If you take out those Eagles and Cowboys games and you replace them with like non-divisional games against like teams that aren't even that great, like just replace them with like teams that are 500 right now, they probably lose those games. Maybe they win 1, but they probably lose those 3. And if you take that into account, instead of 4-7, the Redskins are 1-10. And if the Redskins are 1-10 playing at the Steelers, this line is 14 or higher, right? So, yeah. I feel like that. I feel that way about like with every single NFC East team this week. Like, they're all playing road games against superior teams. You have the Eagles playing at the Packers, you have the Giants at the Seahawks, you have the Cowboys at the Ravens to talk about later, and here we have Washington against the Steelers. I just think whatever this line is going to be, it's not going to be nearly as high. What's holding me back is what you said. I think the Steelers might not be focused for this game. We might not get their best effort, which might allow the Redskins to get a backdoor cover or something. But I think the Steelers should be able to shut down the running game pretty well, and the Steelers should be able to throw up against this number 1 ranked pass defense that has gone against like Andy Dalton and Ben DiNucci and all those other guys. Like I think I feel like that's really gonna be we're going to see that it's misleading. So right now I'm going to side with the Steelers. We'll see, but I could be talked into maybe going the other side because they're not going to be focused.
Yeah, that number one pass defense, complete mirage. Like they've had a ton of busted coverages this year as well. So that's kind of been a big deal that we haven't talked about, that hasn't been talked about with that. So I could definitely see Pittsburgh blowing out Washington. I think the extra time to prepare is going to give Ron Rivera time to motivate his team, and I think the Steelers are going to overlook it. But if we get to like Thursday and Mike Tomlin's like, yeah, we are just going to obliterate this, like, and he's like, we are so focused, like we stopped preparing for the Ravens because we knew we had them beat and started preparing for Washington. Yeah, give me the Steelers, but I'm going to be on Washington for now.
Sounds good. The real Monday night game, the Bills versus the Niners, because this game will be played in Arizona. Not really sure why, but the line opened up Bills -2.5. It was 3 for a while, and then it fell back down to 2.5. So who do you like here?
I like the 49ers here. I think they're a good team that's been put down by bad circumstances. Like I thought that they were going to have a Super Bowl hangover at the beginning of the year. That turned out to be somewhat true, but then they suffered so many injuries. Like they lost so many players on defense and offense, and then they got a bunch of them back last week, and then suddenly they beat the Rams. And that's not a coincidence. Richard Sherman was huge for them. Deebo Samuel had a massive game, and Raheem Mostert was just significantly better in the running game than Jerick McKinnon was. And Jeff Wilson Jr. was back too. So they had a bunch of guys come back last week. Trent Williams too. Can't forget him. This week, Brandon Ayuk is already going to be coming back. And him with the ball in his hands, Debo with the ball in his hands. Both of those guys make a ton of big plays. So I like how they match up with this Bills defense, which is, pretty good in the secondary, but has struggled against tight ends. So Jordan Reed will be able to take advantage of that. And then you have Ayuk and Samuel, who, Tre'Davious White's probably going to be on Samuel, but you can just get the ball to Samuel in so many ways that he will make an impact. So I think that's going to be huge for the San Francisco offense. And then defensively, now that they're healthy and that Richard Sherman's back, that secondary looks a lot stronger. The Bills are playing without John Brown, and Josh Allen has had some trouble this year without Josh Brown. Not Josh Brown, John Brown. Oh my God. I thought I was going to make it through this episode without, calling someone by the wrong name, but we didn't do it this time, guys. Sorry.
Well, is the old kicker for the Seahawks.
Oh yeah, that's who I'm thinking of. That was the one. Yeah, that's who popped into my head. But yeah. Anyway, I think Josh Allen's going to have a little bit of trouble throwing on this defense, and the run game's not going to be there at all. They took advantage last week of a bad Chargers defensive line, or not a bad defensive line, a bad run defense, I should say. But I think the 49ers are going to be ready for that. So I don't see Buffalo moving the ball that much. I think the 49ers are probably, even not at home, closer to even with the Bills. So I like them as the underdog here. So I'll be on them with a couple units, even if they're playing in Arizona for the next few weeks.
Yeah, I wonder if that the whole Arizona thing might serve as a distraction. Like I've noticed over the years, the teams that have had to move from the home games to somewhere else, they've not done poorly. Like the Bears in I think it was 2002 when they had to play in Champaign, or the Saints in 2005 when they had to play in San Antonio, or the Chargers. I forget what year it was, but they had to move from San Diego to I believe it was Arizona because of the wildfires. Like all these teams that did not do well, and I think that might affect the Niners. Like it's not like a natural disaster, or well maybe it is, but like it's not really. It came out of the blue or anything. Like I feel like they may have been prepared for it. Like the NFL really was too. The NFL actually made sure they didn't schedule Cardinal and 49er home games on the same day, which is like kind of like incredible foresight on their part. I don't know how they figured that out, but I think that it might serve as a distraction because they might have to move their families or something like that, or they're going to have to commute, which is kind of like it's going to be a little tedious for them. But the big thing for me here is that I think that the 49ers are getting too much credit for winning last week. Like I know that they got Richard Sherman back and Debo and Mostert and Trent Williams. Like they're definitely a lot better than they were against the Packers in that Thursday night game a few weeks ago. But beating the Rams shouldn't be that impressive. Like the Rams aren't that good. And I think that win is giving them too much credit, and it's moved the line too much. Like the advanced spread on this game was Bills -2.5, and it's still 2.5. But that's kind of that's a mirage, right? Because that original -2.5 was taking into account with San Francisco being played in San Francisco, not on a neutral site. So it would really be like 4.5 in San Francisco. I think the Bills should be favored by more than 2.5. I think they're a lot better than the Niners. The Niners still have injuries. Like they have 2 offensive linemen who are down, and I think the Bills should be able to win in the trenches. They still don't have their pass rush, so I think Josh Allen should do well. I know their corners are back, but I still think Allen should have some success. The Niners just lost their slot corner, their backup slot corner, who was playing for the start, or they're just starter. So I think Cole Beasley in the slot should do well. I just think the Bills should be able to win this game against the Niners team that, like, it is they're better, but I don't think they're as good as they looked against the Rams.
Yeah, I'm not putting as much stock into the game against the Rams as much as I am just them having them back. Like the only one of those players that I guess a couple of those players looked good. It's Debo and Richard Sherman were huge. And then Trent Williams just an upgrade over Justin School any day of the week. But like Mostert didn't have a great game against the Rams. And I'm not trying to read too much into it, but I just think that the 49ers are going to have the motivation here. I am a little bit concerned now, though, about the moved game stats. I wasn't aware that the teams hadn't done well when moving, but it would make sense. I mean, you're away from your family more. It's like what we saw at times in the NBA bubble, where certain players would would have some trouble in various games because they were missing home or missing their families or something was going on. So I'll definitely rethink that at least. I think I'm still going to be on the 49ers. I still think that they're a little underrated, even though the line has moved. And I don't know. I just got a feeling about this one. I'm just going to stick with it.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I agree that they're underrated. They're definitely a lot better than what they were, but I just think that the win over the Rams shouldn't really mean anything. Like I don't know. They beat the Rams earlier too. Like I feel like the Rams are a complete mirage. But anyway, there's a Tuesday game. I believe it's going to be 8:00. The Cowboys at the Ravens. There's no line posted anywhere on this game because we don't know if Lamar Jackson is going to play. It sounds like Jackson has a decent chance of returning. So let's just. I think we can assume that Jackson's going to be back. So with that in mind, who do you like in this game?
I love the Ravens. I would love the Ravens if RG3 was playing. I don't care. The Cowboys are bad. They're missing they're basically their best offensive linemen, all 3 of them. Tyron Smith and La'el Collins are out for the season, and then Zach Martin's out a few weeks. You hit on this earlier. That had a massive impact on the Washington Thanksgiving game. Dallas was at least competitive before he went down, and then after that, couldn't move the ball at all. And that score was a little misleading because it was closer than it looked, but it looked like Washington blew him out at the end. So without those 3 guys, the Ravens defense, which will get a bunch of guys back off the COVID list, is just going to tee off on Andy Dalton. He's not going to be able to get the ball to his receivers or do much at all. Ezekiel Elliott's been horrible lately. He hasn't had a rushing touchdown since Dak was quarterback, and he just keeps fumbling the game away. He seems completely not focused. And then, the Ravens offense, they're not great. They're not as good as they were last year. But they're playing against the Cowboys defense, and the Cowboys defense is terrible. So I'll be all over Baltimore unless this line is absolutely absurd. But I'm expecting it to be something similar to whatever the Pittsburgh-Washington line ends up being. So that's at -10.5 now. I can see this one being slightly higher because the perception of Dallas is worse. So I can see it being 11.5 or 12, but I'm totally fine with that either way.
Yeah, and you have to think that Brandon Williams, we know Brandon Williams is going to be back, but Calais Campbell is definitely going to be back too. Those 2 guys will definitely play in this game. The Ravens will have basically everyone back from the COVID list. So we assume that, and Jackson I think will play. So as long as Jackson plays, I think the Ravens should cover. But like you said, even if it's Robert Griffin, you still kind of have to like the Ravens. And I really don't even know what that line would be with Griffin. Probably 4.5 or 5, something like that. Dallas is just such trash. Like I really thought they would make a run at the end of the year, and I was kind of scared for my Giants NFC East prop. But when Zach Martin went down, like that was it, and like that was one of the reasons why I like the Cowboys so much. Is because they figured out that they could move Martin to right tackle, and their offensive line played a lot better against Minnesota. And then when Martin went out, it's like, that's it. It's over. Like they can't block anymore. It's the same issues they had against the Redskins the first time they played them. So I don't know how they're going to block a Ravens defensive line with Campbell and Williams. And I don't know how they're going to stop Lamar Jackson, even though Jackson hasn't played well this year. I'm almost certainly going to be on the Ravens. It would take like a very weird line, like above 14.5, or like, I guess a lot of Raven players not coming back from the COVID list, but it sounds like they will.
Yeah, it sounds like I was looking at a schedule earlier, and it sounds like most of them will be back. Maybe a few won't. Willie Snead, maybe not. But yeah, Andrew's right. I would pick the Ravens if they didn't have a QB. Maybe not. I don't know. We saw what Kendall Hinton did, but I don't trust Dallas at all. So let's just go with the Ravens.
Yeah, I find myself wondering if I'd pick the Ravens if they like traded for Kendall Hinton and started him the quarterback.
Oh man, I might. That's if they were favored, I wouldn't, but I might bet that line, and I don't feel good about saying that, but I feel like Kendall Hinton's going to be the ultimate. Like, all right, what do you think this line would be if Kendall Hinton was starting thing that we're going to do for years and years?
Poor Kendall Hinton. He went 1 for 9, 1 for 9 and 2 interceptions. I never thought I'd see more interceptions than completions, and like he almost threw 4 interceptions, which is just unbelievable. This is so bad. I thought he'd at least run around a little bit more, but it just didn't work for him. So a teaser I was looking at the lines for a teaser this week. I don't really see all that much. Like the Raiders taking them down from -7.5 to 1.5, I think is the most obvious play. I just can't find a team I would pair them with. I know you like the Niners, so with that in mind, going from +2.5 to +8.5 is a good move. And even though I like the Bills, I think I would still consider that. So if I had to make a teaser right now, it would be the Raiders and the Niners.
That's exactly what I was going to do too. I think the Niners are a great team to have in teasers because I think even if the Bills cover and win, I don't think that they're going to win by more than 7. That's just what I think. But I think they're really good to have there.
Yeah, and that's why you want to bet up or bet down. Like you want to get through those 3 key numbers. You want to get through 7, 6, and 3. Like that gives you the best chance to hit a teaser. So I like those are the only 2 sides to see right now where you can do that right now. So that's it. There are some lines that aren't posted yet, but it doesn't look like we're going to get anything with good teaser related. Survivor pick. So we had the Bills last week. We lost twice. First the Colts and then the Vikings. So I was looking at this week's slate and, taking out the teams that we picked already, the 2 teams that stand out are the Raiders and the Seahawks. And I was like, all right, so which team has where can we use another team again? And next week, the Seahawks play the Jets. And this is the easiest game the Raiders have remaining. So I'm going to be on the Raiders this week, even though I am out of my Survivor contest.
Yeah, I would be on the Raiders too. I've been out since week 1 and didn't have paid reentry. So so I'll go with the Raiders. I have no idea who I've picked at this point. I'm probably going to go back and watch all these ends at some point to see who I ended up picking and if I ever picked the same team twice. But I'd be on the Raiders here. Then the Seahawks would be my second choice. And then if I really wanted to go off the board, oh man, it might be hard. I would consider taking the Lions depending on the injury outlook there. That would be that's my one sleeper team. Like if you don't have the Raiders, you don't have the Seahawks, like I don't mind them as a sleeper if Galladay plays and Hicks is out and Swift plays. If it's different, that's by no means a lock or anything, but I think that they have a good chance of winning.
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you if the injury report fell that way. Luckily for anyone still playing, there's so many big favorites this week that you don't really have to dig for a team like that. But if you are stuck, I think looking at the injury report at the end of the week and if you see good news for the Lions, that I think they should be in consideration. So anyway, that is it for this week. Do you have anything to plug?
Yeah, you can follow me on Twitter at Jacob Camenker. I tweet out all my picks every week, or maybe not all of them, but a good chunk of them. My favorite plays at the very least, and all the primetime games. I also tweet some of my work from Sporting News Fantasy. You can follow them on Twitter at SN_fantasy, or visit them online at sportingnews.com/fantasy for all your fantasy needs. So yeah, follow me on Twitter though, and let's talk some football.
Sounds good. Once again, please hit subscribe or the like button or comment. Like, that would mean a lot, or share this video. I'm at waltzerfootball.com. Plenty of pick updates throughout the week. And as I always say, Saturday is the most important day because we get the Friday injury report. I'm going to be updating the 2021 NFL mock draft tonight for tomorrow morning. Even though we don't have the Steelers-Ravens result, like that's really not going to really affect the draft order unless the Ravens win. So I feel fine with it just going forward. So we have our updated 2021 NFL mock draft tomorrow. Charlie Campbell updated his 2022 NFL mock draft as well as his 2021. So if you want to see who's going to be drafted after this April, definitely check that out. Charlie has all the inside scoop from scouts and GMs and coaches. Like, he talks to everyone in the NFL. So definitely check that out. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week.
All right. Sounds good. Talk to you then.